Um, I think the idea of what we wanted to talk about regarding making a CMA was the key factors that go into like picking appropriate comps and adjusting them so that you can actually see what the real market value for a property is. Because there's lots of tools that can help you make a report, right? Like Cloud CMA can make this really nice report, whether it's digital or you print it, and it can help you pull comps as well. Or you can go directly to the MLS to get your comps. Um, you can also do things like check the values from other portals that have automated evaluation numbers like Zillow, Realtor, all those websites. They all have their own version of an automated computation to come up with a value. But I would honestly never trust those numbers because sometimes they're all over the place. Sometimes they're very, very similar with each other, and that might say something, but they still don't know the current condition of the home. They still don't know specifics of maybe improvements or things that make big factor in cost and can adjust the value of something quite a bit. They don't know these things because it's just an automated machine. So maybe as a very starting point, just to keep in the back of your head, you can check those, but I wouldn't go just on those ever. You can very quickly pull comps and find a range of value for a property without getting into too much work. If you want to do a full report for a sit down with a listing appointment, then you would go the distance and maybe do something that's a little bit more detailed. But that's kind of the thing I wanted to talk about today was the basics of what you should know. So at the very least, if you do use, for example, the Cloud CMA feature where it's pulling comps, you need to know that it's pulling the right ones, that it's doing the job properly, right? So I kind of tried to break down the checklist into main things that you want, main components of things that you're going to be doing, starting off with gathering information about your property. By going above what maybe an old MLS listing says, or more than just what's on the tax property report, like square footage, bedrooms, and bathrooms, right? You're going to try to find out things like zoning options, whether or not there's an HOA or Mello-Roos or things like this that can, dramatically impact the overall cost of the property. And then it's really helpful to go to Google and do Street View and Satellite View to see the things around that might impact. Is there a commercial place right across the street? Is there a school around the corner and that gets backed up like crazy every day? Is there a train track, 100 feet away? Like you can't see that from the street view, but you could see it from the satellite view. Those things can significantly impact value, and will make properties sit longer, that kind of thing. So other things you can do are asking the owner, if you have the option to do that, about major updates or really anything that they did to the property. They'll go on and on. Trust me, just ask them. um, and if there's anything that's permitted versus non-permitted that they may have done, because a lot of people do their own renovations and remodeling and they don't always get permits. It's okay if something's not permitted. You should know. And also, are there any other income producing options on the property? Because that can affect value too. If there's an ADU in the back, that's very different than a house that doesn't have one. Or is it a property that has a separate entrance to maybe like one side of it that could be used as an apartment or for additional family or something like that? That can impact it too. And then really try to pay attention based on everything you learn from things that can affect the value. I called it value levers. Like, is there a pool? Is there a spa? Is there solar? And is it owned versus leased? What's the yard usability? Is there noise or traffic? Is there a school nearby? Things like that, right? Just note those things. And for everything that I'm discussing, I added a few little tips and hints, like for example, on the ADU and the solar and things like that can, take a note of that because they can affect energy efficiency, if you have solar or not. ADUs can affect whether or not you can make income with the property, and flag any conditions that, might be something that you'll need to look into, like um, deferred maintenance, like severe deferred maintenance. What did I put here? Cracked slabs, anything that roof issues, things that maybe might be flagged on an appraisal. Take a note of that. Just because it's something you'll have to keep in mind. Does the seller want to deal with that or not? And if not, you'll have to price it accordingly, appropriately. It's kind of like if you price things correctly, when you get to talking about how to list, then it'll make all the difference in how well it sells. But right now, you're just trying to get a gauge of value based on actual current condition, right? The next part would be defining your comp box. In other words, the set of comparables, right? You want a small amount of compare. You don't want 20 comps. You want as few as possible to get to enough data that gives you a good idea of the value of those comparables, and in turn, what your property could be valued at. So think core issues, geography. You want them nearby, ideally in the same tract if possible, but that's not always possible. If it's not, maybe a similar one nearby. Avoid crossing major freeways, especially if that completely changes the neighborhood. And avoid going into other neighborhoods where there's a comp that's similar, but in that neighborhood, all the homes are way more expensive. You'll be able to tell based on, if you look around at the other homes around. You can't compare. You have to compare apples to apples, not apples to oranges. They're not just fruit. They got to be the same fruit, right? Think of it that way. Also, the other major aspect of when you're looking at the comps is time frame. You really want to shoot for something within the last 3 to 6 months. Right now, I think it might be appropriate to go even as far as 12 because there haven't been as many sales. And if you need to go further than that, just adjust a little bit for how the market is moving. And then type, obviously, don't compare a condo to a single family residence. They're not the same thing, right? You want to stick within the same type of property and roughly the same features. So 15 to 20%, within 15 to 20% of like gross living area. And maybe one bedroom up or down, or one bathroom up and down. The bathrooms are less of an issue. And similar amenities, similar lots, similar use of the home, right? If one has barely a backyard, maybe a balcony, and the other one has half an acre of land, not the same thing. So when you use an automated tool and it's pulling comps, a lot of times it's not taking those things into consideration, or if it is, you're not sure how much. And you want to make sure that you look at the comps that it pulls so that you can see if those things are accurate or not. And you might need to remove that comp or adjust for it. And I say adjust if it's kind of close. If it's really far off, just get rid of it and find a better one, right? Something to consider on comps when you're trying to think which ones should I pick is view, proximity to what is proximity to coast and canyons? Okay, I think I meant to say like proximity to like the beach or mountains and things like that. Whether or not they're in the same community, HOA differences, whether or not there's Mello-Roos, that could be a big difference. And whether or not it's on a busy street versus a cul-de-sac, that can obviously, that's a difference. That can swing value a lot. It doesn't always, but it can. So if you see that a comp has that, you have to keep it in mind, make your notes, maybe make some adjustments for it. If your house is in a cul-de-sac and all the comps are on busy streets and you can't find any other ones that are on a cul-de-sac, okay, fine, but you're going to have to make some adjustments for that, right? Because it's not the same use. It's not the same. You don't live the same life in that house than you do in the other one, right? Um, so what did I think the thing I wanted to put in here, because I used to be an appraiser, and I remember that was one thing that they focused on more than anything else was picking the appropriate comps, because there were always lots to pick from. And it's like, oh, which ones are the best, right? I think you have to be realistic. Is someone using this house the same way from my subject to the comps? Would they be living in it the same way? You have to think realistically. It's not always just about the numbers or the exact distance that something is away. you know, just think realistically when you're looking at them. The way a buyer would they really compare the two? Are they really the same? Um, and make adjustments when you need to. Now, if you're pulling your comps directly yourself from the MLS, there's some things to keep in mind. And if you're not, you just want to double check the comps that are being pulled automatically for you if you're using an automated system like Cloud CMA to make sure that it did this right. You want to search closed, pending, which I actually feel like closed and pending are the most important. And then a few actives too, or active under contract. Sometimes it might be a good idea if there's a lot happening in the community to see what happened with like canceled expireds. What kind of price point were they at? Is there a reason they canceled out? Just to have an idea of what not to do. Don't do what those guys did. But definitely closed are the things that an appraiser would use, the comps the appraiser would use and put the biggest weight on. I feel like us as real estate agents, we also need to keep a really good eye on actives and pendings because they are your direct competition. They are telling you what people are wanting to do right now. The pendings are saying, here's what they're accepting at right now. And by the way, if you're in the MLS, in case you didn't realize this, and you see something that's pending or active under contract, and it says an amount, that amount is what it was last listed for. It is not what they accepted. So if you want to know what something went into contract for, you have to call that listing agent and ask, hey, just curious, I'm trying to use your place as a comp. What did you, go in contract for? Sometimes they'll tell you, and sometimes they won't. I find that if they don't want to, you can simply ask, well, was it over the list price or under a lot or a little, things like that. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. My stupid instant messenger is going off. I don't know how to shut it down right now. So when you're pulling comps from the MLS, you can choose each one of those statuses. And what I suggest is to do one at a time. Do closed, pull those, then do actives, and pull those, and then do like the pendings. Just do them separately. It's easier to like manage, right? And see how many you're dealing with. You can use the map feature to center on your property, and then either do like half a mile or a mile away, or draw around boundary lines of a community. If you know everything outside of that community totally different than that community, then draw a little polygon around the community and say, I'm only looking right here. I don't care about the rest. You can do that too. So by doing that, I feel like it lets you remove outliers, especially if you're looking at a list of comps that were pulled for you from an automated search. You're going to want to see them all on a map so that you can tell, oh, hey, this one is in a similar neighborhood, but over here, this one is within my neighborhood and it's good. This one matches all of the characteristics, but it's in a neighborhood that's completely different. Doesn't look anything like this, and it's too far away. That one you can just take off the list. Find a better comp. I always say, if in doubt, find a better comp. Don't try to make something that isn't working fit, because that's you now trying to make a number work. And that's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to see what the real numbers are, not trying to come up with justification for a number that you're shooting for. So I would say, based on geography, remove obvious outliers, but then also remove ones that maybe I call noise. Flips, for example. If you see that a comp sold for a ton, but it was bought 3 months before for like $200,000 less, yeah, I'm just saying. You know what I mean? That's not the same maybe kind of sale that other homes would be in the community. You know what I mean? Be cautious of things like that. Um, they tend to overestimate and oversell because of the improvements they just made, and they drive the price up, and they have a good marketing plan, they get somebody to buy it. That doesn't mean that all the other homes will sell for that. So I'm just saying, be mindful of that. You don't have to remove it as a comp, but just be mindful of it, especially if they did some really big updates. And then also remove outliers of value. If you have a whole bunch of comps that you pull between sold, actives, and pendings, and they're all kind of within this range, but then there's one way over here, and then there's one way over here that are really low or really high, drop them. They're just going to throw off your numbers. What you want is a nice, tight average, right? You don't have to keep the outliers unless there's some real big specific reason why you need to. Like, it was an absolute recent sale right around the corner of the exact same unit, that kind of thing. Just drop it, because it could really skew things one way or another. So I think overall, having about 3 sold comps is a good target, and that are, clearly similar in location, in size, in condition. 3 to 6 months old, hopefully no longer than that. And then just verifying that they're arm's length sales. It wasn't like a sale from a family member to another family member, or a distress sale or something like that, right? Because the majority of homes won't be that. So you want to, again, apples to apples, compare apples to apples. And what I added in here about actives and pendings was that they are kind of like your reality check. They're showing you what the current competition is. When you get to talking about pricing strategy, that's when you'll go over the numbers on actives and pendings to show them, hey, we can price this way because here's what we have as competition, or we can price this way. You give them options based on the information that you find. Sometimes you'll see that the actives are all really high, but the sales are all really low on the range. And what that tells you is homes are selling for less than what they're asking. But if all the competition is really high, you can offer a pricing strategy that maybe is just below them to stand out from the competition, and hopefully garner more buyers and get a higher sales price than they would trying at those higher prices, which is what I see a lot happening right now, to be honest. A lot of sellers are just starting here and going like, oh, we can wait. So you have to see what the neighborhood is doing, right? That's the whole point of this CMA. It's not just to get a number for a house based on its size and bedrooms. It's to see what are buyers doing when they buy homes in this particular market right now, right? It's to get an overall gauge of what's happening in the market in that area overall. Does that make sense? Okay. Some hints and tips on that one. Let's see.
Just to affirm you, Monica, all of that made sense and it was so great to hear. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, okay, okay, good, good. Um, I think the next step was about cleaning and evaluating comps. And what I mean by that, and the reason I say this is an art, because it really, really is. It's kind of like the same way you'll have two or three different appraisers do an appraisal on a home. They'll all come up with a different number. Yeah. It's because it is an art. At the end of the day, it's subjective. It's based on the person who's doing the research, and you might all use the same comps, but what you see, what you know about your subject property and the comps, and how you would make adjustments for that is where the art comes in. And you want to be mindful that you're doing it in a realistic way, in a way that's consistent across the board for that neighborhood and for the properties. You don't want to skew things for one property one way and for another property do something totally different. Was, you know, be mindful that you're being realistic with those numbers. The one thing I added on here was to compare photos closely. And this is something I didn't used to always do in the beginning. And I realized eventually you really do have to. When you're looking at the comps, the numbers and their stats are one thing, but then you really, really want to get in there and look at the photos. That will tell you a lot about the condition, the updates, the yard, the view, the flow of the house, things like this. It can, it'll make a difference for buyers. So it should make a difference for how you evaluate the value too, how you evaluate the current price for what that home should be listed at. So, I'm not sure if there's any tips or hints I can give you about the photos, but I would say this, if you find a comp that seems to match all the numbers, but there's no photos at all, I mean, it would be fine. I think you can use it. Maybe try and see if you can find older photos from a past listing, or check the details on the comp and make sure that it doesn't say like, oh, it's distressed or, tenant owned, or you'll have to do updates. A lot of times when they don't show photos, it's for a reason. And usually it's not a
Yeah.
good one. Yeah. Usually it's not a good reason. So I just be mindful of the comps with no photos. I'll just leave it at that. And aim for, like I said, about 3 to 5 max sold properties and like 2 to 4 pendings. Not too many. Try to keep it tight. And shoot for, like, at the very least, one property that's slightly better than your subject. One property that's slightly less cool than yours, and then one that could be like its baby twin. That's really, really similar. Almost everything is hitting the same. Hopefully it's the same model in the same community, that kind of thing. Like really, really, really close. Shoot for at least those three. If you just have that, fine. Great. All you need. If you have a little bit more, that's good too. But if you just have that, that's okay too. And I did mention in the tips and hints, it's okay to run a quick price per square foot, check on the different properties just to make sure they're similar in that way. But really always just cross-check condition, location, usability, things like that, because they make a big difference, especially on land. If you have a 3 bedroom, 1,012, let's say 3 bedroom, 1,000 square foot house, right? Tiny house. Over here with a small yard. And then over here you have the same house, exactly, but with a humongous lot, right? they will be sold at different prices because of the land, right? But when you look at price per square foot, it's going based on square footage of the house versus the sales price. Do you see what I'm saying? It's essentially not taking into account that huge lot. That's why I say apples to apples. Otherwise, things like price per square foot doesn't make sense anymore because it's not taking into account all that land. Whereas there's value here in Southern California, land has a lot of value. So just be mindful of that when you're picking which ones to choose to keep versus which ones you're going to toss. And then making consistent adjustments. And when I say adjustments, here's what I mean. You have your property, your subject property, and then you have the comps. If you need to make adjustments for the fact that the comps have nicer updates, let's say, right? I did an example here. Let's say your comp has a pool, but your subject property does not. You're always going to adjust the comparable, not your subject property, for that difference. So you're going to take the price of that comp and you're going to deduct an appropriate value for the pool so that it is more equal to your subject property. You're never going to do it the other way around. You only ever adjust the comparable properties so that they can be adjusted to be more like yours. And then you take those adjusted numbers and you see where those adjusted numbers are at. So you can focus on things like square footage. Those are places you can make adjustments. Bedrooms and bathrooms, condition for sure, right? A lot of updates versus it's like original. That's a big difference. Whether there's a pool or not, whether there's a view, additional things like ADUs, large lots, whatever, right? You'll make adjustments for those. And what I mentioned in here was when it comes to square footage, a lot of times this is where I got stuck too when I was appraising. And this is where I think a lot of people get stuck. If they're going to need to make adjustments, how much? Well, how much of an adjustment do I make for the house that has 2,000 square feet versus the house that has 1,500 square feet, right? It depends. I always say the answer is always it depends. And the reason I say that is because are you already making adjustments for additional bedrooms and bathrooms on the bigger house? If you are, then you're probably not going to want to make adjustments on the square footage as well. Those things usually go together, right? The bigger house has more bedrooms and bathrooms because it has extra square footage. So when it comes to square footage, bedrooms and bathrooms, you want to be mindful you're not double dipping on the adjustments if you need to make them, right? Ideally, you're finding comps that have the same bedrooms and bathrooms. And if that's the case, then you would adjust for some square footage differences. But for most properties, if they're within, let's say that's a small condo, under 1,000 square feet, I would make an adjustment after like 100 square feet difference. But within that first 100, 150 square feet, is anybody really going to care about that 100 square feet? Are they going to pay a lot more for the one that has it versus the one that doesn't? If everything else was identical? Probably not. So you have to just be realistic about how much of a difference is okay. And above that, start making some adjustments. If you're talking about a bigger home, let's say it's a 3,000 square foot home, right? Versus a 2,500 square foot home. Well, now I would probably increase that range of okay difference where I'm not making an adjustment to like maybe 300 square feet or 400 square feet. And above that, I would start making some changes or adjust. So you just have to think practically when it comes to that, especially on really small spaces, on smaller units or condos or small homes. A lot of times you don't really have to make those adjustments because you're already doing it on bedrooms and bathrooms. Condition also requires some adjustments. And again, I think this is where you need to be mindful and reasonable. Um, don't start making a list of every single update that this comp may had that your subject doesn't, and then put a number for every single one of those. Try to say more of like, this is average condition, this is above average condition. This is not updated, this is updated. And are people going to pay an extra $30,000 for all of these updates, or 40 or 50? And if you want to know whether or not what that number is, if you're trying to figure out what the number is, which is the thing that's usually the hardest to figure out, the way you do that is by finding two comps that are identical in the neighborhood, except for that one difference. Like these two homes are identical, except that one has a pool. That one doesn't have a pool. Try to find a few instances of that in that community, and you will know what people are willing to pay for a pool versus no pool. Does that make sense? Um, on square footage, you can again look at things like, are you already adjusting for the bedrooms and bathrooms, first of all? And if you're not, you can use like a reasonable price per square foot based on looking at the differences in the homes that are being sold there. These two homes are both 3 bedrooms, but this one is 500 square foot bigger, and that's what those homes are selling for. You know what I mean? So you kind of get an average of what's happening with that in that neighborhood, and that gives you an indicator of how much people are willing to pay for that extra space, that extra square footage. So the things are square footage, bedrooms, bathrooms, condition, and then other unique features. Like, is there a view or not? That's gonna sometimes that people pay a lot for that, right? So how much of a view, Is it a little nice little view over there in the corner sometimes, if the wind's right? Or is there just a valley view in your backyard and it looks fantastic every single day? So, you know, be mindful of those, and always ask for help when it comes to making these kinds of adjustments. If you're not sure, ask an appraiser. Call a freaking appraiser, one of the ones that worked recently on a deal you did. Call them up and ask them. They're happy to help you. Especially if
Monica,
it's,
I have a question for
yeah.
you. I'm sorry, just so we don't go off to the next one. But when you're looking at those, I tend to just look at the closed ones when I'm making adjustments. Do you do that as well? I really don't go off active because sometimes those numbers are so up and down that I will look to
Yes.
see what actually closed.
I absolutely agree. That would be the best way to do that. If you're trying to figure out how much to adjust for things, definitely
Uh-huh.
go by closed deals, because that's truly what actually happened and what people actually paid
Yeah.
versus what they're hoping to get with actives. Maybe pendings might work as well, but definitely stay away from actives when you're trying to do that kind of research. Yeah.
Okay. Just
Um,
wanted to double check if.
yeah, and ideally you're finding comps that are so close to yours that you don't really have to make a lot of adjustments. Maybe
Sure.
one or two here. That's that's the ultimate goal you're shooting for when you're looking comps. How many can you eliminate to get these ideal ones here, right?
Sure. And
Um,
another thing that we're dealing with the market, let me know what you think about this, but is concessions are huge right now. And so those numbers are a little off as well, even for active, because what I'm getting is yes, it might be priced at 500, but they're paying, 25,000 in concessions.
yeah,
Whereas you might get somebody pricing it at 475, expecting not to pay any concessions. So are you
yeah,
starting to see that happen?
absolutely, absolutely. Every time I look in the MLS and you see that information at the bottom now, thank God they have that in there now. Like honestly,
Right.
I'm so kind of annoyed that they didn't before. Because it makes a big difference. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you'll make those adjustments as you go, and like I say, to do a full CMA report for someone that you're going to sit down and do a listing appointment with, you really want to go through all these details to be accurate. if you're just doing kind of a rough, let's get a general idea of cost, you can leave a lot of these adjustments off and just get a range and say, here's our range. We can talk about being in the average in the middle, or we can talk about pricing plan if you want to be at the top of a range or at the bottom of the range, and give them options. It's to really be accurate and say this is what I truly think your home is worth, and make that range really tight. You got to do these extra steps, and honestly, this is, if you get good at this, it's not hard and it goes fast. You just have to practice. That's all it is. Reading the numbers and the story is the last part I had here. And I think this is where you're more looking at not just the numbers of the comps, but also what is happening in the market, how quickly homes are selling, if they're pricing at the top end, what's happening. Are they having to drop a lot before they start to get into escrow? Are the finished homes that have really nice upgrades actually moving faster than the average ones that maybe didn't do all of that? Or is it basically about the same? You want to kind of see all of these data points and be able to show them to the seller, to the potential seller, so that they can get a clear indication of expectation for the various pricing strategies that you're going to talk to them about. Because you can give them a range of, here's where the values are for the comps, but then they're going to ask you, well, so what should we do? Right? They're gonna want your opinion about where to put the listing price. And if you can see that, for example, that homes are sitting on the market for this long and the list to sale ratio is at this number, then you can give them a better indicator of, based on, if we price this way, here's what I think is going to happen. If we price this way, here's what I think is going to happen. And they make their own choices based on the information you're giving them and their own needs and motivation. Do they have to move really quick? Do they want to get the absolute every penny possible out of their home? What's the thing that's most important to them? And they can then choose what fits better for them based on the options you're giving them. I put in here tips and hints. Always use this as a sanity check. If I were a buyer, would I pick this subject at that price over the best comp? And if the answer is no, you tweak it. And what I mean by that is, if you realize that the value you're coming up with is not really, you're unsure about it, and you don't feel 100% confident, you kind of have to go back to this question. Do the comps really match the subject property? And if those numbers are coming out to this, and I'm saying the value of the subject is something different, why? Would I really choose that over the comps? So I think that that's kind of a way to kind of just keep yourself in check and make sure that you don't, I don't know, that you don't kind of skew the numbers to fit an idea you already have in your head. It's really easy to do that, you guys. You initially have an idea about the price of the home, either because the seller told you that or because of some numbers you saw online. And then subconsciously, you kind of choose the comps that make that work. You have to constantly check yourself and make sure that you're not doing that. Which is why I say sometimes don't even check the values anywhere. Just start doing your own research. And what the seller has in mind is, it's good to know, because you want to be able to discuss that and explain why that is a good number, a bad number, a reasonable number, or here's what we could do with that number. But it's irrelevant. They're asking you for your professional opinion for a reason, because they're not sure what to do. So if they knew they absolutely wanted to list it for only that price and nothing else, they would just tell you that, right? They want to actually sell their home, and you're trying to give them a number that will actually result in that, versus Just the idea of I want to put my home on the market at this number and hope that somebody says that that's a good idea. I want to buy that for that amount because that's the only way it's going to happen for them. That's the only way it's going to actually result in them getting what they want. So when you're, as part of the last bit, which is discussing pricing strategy once you have your CMA, just think about that. Think about offering the seller options based on an idea that they had and the numbers that you come up with, and giving them a realistic expectation of what would happen if you listed at this price, or this price. Never give them more than 3 options. You could even stick at 2 if you wanted. I would say never just give them 1, because then you're talking about yes or no answer, or I'll think about it, or whatever else they want to come up with to tell you. I think it's easier to get somebody on board with you when you can show them the numbers, show them that you're trying to give them realistic information and a positive outcome, regardless of which option they pick, right? So if they pick option A and you start at this price and it's a little bit higher, it might take longer, but you'll get more. If you pick option B and we start at the lower end and get a lot more eyeballs, it'll probably sell faster and hopefully drive up the price a little bit because there'll be more competition. Maybe if you go more in the middle, there'll be it might take a little bit longer, but it'll probably sell at that price or maybe a little bit above. Just based on what you're seeing, you can give them those options and those clear expectations so they can make a good decision. And then they feel like they did it with you and it's their choice, and they can't just come back and blame you and say, oh, you said it was going to do this and it didn't do it. It's your fault. Ultimately, that's, if things don't go well, they want to blame somebody. You can build these reports, these CMA reports in the matrix of, in the MLS matrix. There's a way to do that right in there when you pull your comps. You can also do it in Cloud CMA, which pulls information from the MLS for you. It basically decides which comps are best. But the one thing that's really great about Cloud CMA is you can say, nah, I don't like your choices. I'm going to use these ones. And you can specify the MLS listings that you want it to use. And it can build the report based on the ones you give it. So if you prefer to do that, find your own comps in the MLS and then bring them into the Cloud CMA, you can do that too. Or you can just bring one extra one in there that it didn't find that you really want to use. Something like that. If you guys would like to see how that actually works, how you go into the MLS and pull comps, or how you go into Cloud CMA and actually do a report in Cloud CMA, I told Bobby I'd be happy to do a Zoom where I share my screen and I show you guys step by step how I actually do it. I just know that that's going to take way longer than 30 minutes. And I'd like to be able to do that as a separate training so that we can take the time and there can be questions and you guys can follow along and I can go a little slower with it, because when you're not familiar with the system, it's really helpful to see it in action and not go too fast, right? Or at least have it recorded so you can go back and do the replay. But I feel like these are the important factors to keep in mind when you're just choosing comparables, when you're trying to figure out what is happening in this neighborhood so that I can get an idea of value, regardless of whether you're pulling them or somebody else is pulling them. Or even for the basic thing, like, let's say it's not a CMA. Let's say you're reviewing an appraisal that you just got in that they say, the value's too low or something, and you're reviewing the comps that the appraiser chose, and you're trying to decide, did these guys even do a good job? Because I'll tell you, in all the appraisals I've ever looked at least 50% of them were done by appraisers that were nowhere near the subject property. They're in a different county. They're so far away. How do they even know this area? And sometimes they picked really crappy comps, and there were way better ones that were available to be used. And that's when you can go back and say, hey, what's this all about? You know, let's fix this. And they will. If they can see that you found better comps, they will use them. And if you can justify that, then they will absolutely use them. And sometimes that can make a big, big difference in your deal. So knowing how to pick these comps, whether it's for a CMA or reviewing an appraisal or just getting a quick value of a property for someone, is crucial. Got to get good at this. So practice, practice, practice. Do you guys have any questions?
That was really good, Monica.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you very much. That was wonderful. I think what I'd like to do is, we're out of time right now, but I would like to take a survey to see how many people would be interested in having that step-by-step training that you suggested, Monica. And then I'll let you know, and we can schedule that for a different day, not during Tuesday, but we can schedule it as just a CMA training. So I will go ahead and do that and let you know the outcome. Are there any questions for Monica?
No questions, but thank you. Everything you said put the puzzle pieces together, so that was helpful.
Yeah, actually, it's funny because I was talking to Ashley about this before because she was trying to do a CMA on land, on a piece
Yeah.
of land.
Those are tough.
And if you go to use Cloud CMA, for example, on land, the majority of the time it gets it wrong. It pulls comps that are just not even the same thing. Not the same usability, not the same the right area. It does a really bad job. And so it whether it's for a property or land, it's really important to know how to do this. I'm actually going to do a quick training with Ashley. What is it tomorrow, Ashley?
Yeah, should we just let them jump on if they want?
Yeah, if you want, by all means. Because we were gonna do it on Zoom. So if anybody, she's gonna be doing one for land. So if anybody wants to learn how to do this for land, by all means, jump on. We can.
What time?
Let's see. I think we
I
were
know,
gonna
let me
do.
look.
I want to say 11.
11. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
11, okay. I'll make sure
11.
that everybody is aware. If you can
Okay.
send me the Zoom link so that I can share it, that'd be great.
Okay, I'll do that a little later this after. A little bit here.
Okay,
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
great. Well, thank you so much, Monica. As always, your trainings are fabulous. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing this information. I think it, like Ashley said, it puts the puzzle pieces together. So, thank you.
Trina, did you have a question? I thought I saw you pop on and off there.
No, I don't have any question, but I would like to have this training in person, meaning sitting with you, playing around on the same computer. So when I click it, I remember, because seeing you, it makes sense, but I won't remember.
Totally know what you mean. I know I'm happy to do that too. You know what I mean? We can do both. So if anybody wants to jump on the Zoom with Ashley tomorrow, come on. If I think it's good in person too. So, Bobby, if you want to get everybody's feel for that, I can come down to the office
Yeah.
and we'll do like a
Sure.
workshop just on that for, a couple hours.
Okay, will do.
Okay, cool.
All right. Well, great. Thank you,
Thank
everybody,
you.
for coming. We'll see you next Tuesday. Do we know the topic, Monica, for
No.
next week? Okay, I'll
Is
send it
there
out.
something that would come after this, Monica?
Okay, well, I mean,
Or like what would be the next step in the process? Okay, you got the listing, now what?
Maybe a listing presentation. Did we do that?
Oh,
Because
yeah, that would be good.
CMA goes with listing presentations.
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
I did talk about before getting ready for the listing presentation, but not maybe the actual listing presentation itself. Let
Yeah.
me go back and check because I think maybe I did do one on listing presentation, but I can't remember for sure. I'm gonna double check the recordings, Bobby, because I think we have something on that. But either way, you know what I mean? I'm happy to do it again. I think that's good. Are you guys mostly looking at working with listings right now, or are you working with a lot of buyers too?
I have both
You have both.
options for both.
Okay. Maybe that's another question, Bobby, to ask. If you're putting out a survey, in any case, like through text or something,
Yeah.
would it be more beneficial to talk about like the like the buyer consult
Mhm.
or the listing presentation?
Yeah.
Okay.
There you
One
go.
one other suggestion, Monica, would be actually inputting it into the MLS.
That's
That might
tricky.
be-
That's actually a really
That's a good
good
one.
one. We've never
Yeah.
done that.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
one. Like actually putting the listing on the MLS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I can show you guys how I figured out how to do the virtual staging using chat for free.
Oh, right.
Oh, yes, yes, that's what we need.
But yeah, we could definitely do that. That's the whole thing, putting it in the MLS. Very true.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it is. It's tricky.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Tricky. Yeah.
Yeah,
Getting
All right,
comfortable with the
well-
MLS takes time, you guys. You got to play with
it
it.
does.
All right, well, I'm going to wrap it up and let y'all go, but thank you so much for attending, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank
Look
you.
out for my survey too. Please answer it.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Stop share. And